Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for Connecting in the Real World, Promoting Concept Development in a Pre-K Classroom. My name is Amy Hamley, and I will let my co-presenter introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tiffany Bernard. Both Amy and I are Quality and Education Managers at the ELC. We're happy to have you here with us today.
Just a little training overview. Today we will be introducing instructional support, which is one of the domains in the class tool, but we will specifically be working on concept development, which is one of the dimensions of that domain, and what exactly concept development looks like across a day. We're going to be providing some activities that you can use to promote concept development with your students, such as the when-then strategy. And then at the end, we will be connecting the dots and providing you with some resources that you can take back. I know there's been a lot of talk regarding stipends. As of today, we do not have any concrete information, but please know that we are working on this diligently, and more information will be forthcoming. There is some criteria. If we are to open this to stipends, there is some criteria. So all of that information will come probably in an email or constant contact e-blast. Some webinar housekeeping for you today. If you look at the side of your panel, and you might see this on your left side of your screen or on the right side of your screen, there's a little orange rectangle with a white arrow in it. If you don't see your panel, look for that little orange rectangle, click on it, and the panel will open, and it should look like what is on the right side of the slide, the bottom right side of the slide. That's where you know that your audio is connected, and you are able to see a few things that we just want to go over. So the questions box is one of the features that are on your panel, and you can click here and type any questions or comments. I want to preface by saying that to respect everyone's time and to be able to get through all of the great information that we will be imparting today, we may not necessarily be able to answer all questions during the presentation. As a matter of fact, we may not even be able to answer any of them in this during this 1.5 hours that we have. So we do have reports that we run. This is a recorded webinar. We will run the report and review the questions and get back to you hopefully by next week. As Tiffany said, we are quality and education managers, so we're not only your presenters for today, but we're also working on a lot of other things. So we will try by next week to respond to any questions that we have the answers to. There is also another section on your panel that says handouts, and you can click on that, and it will open up, and you will be able to download each individual handout. You must download them individually. If you are calling in today, you are not using any device such as a computer or tablet, laptop, and you're just calling in, you can, when you get the email tomorrow that says thank you for attending our webinar, you can reply to that, and we will be happy to provide you with the handouts since you are unable to access them live today. your certificate will also be something that is emailed to you. Usually they are either emailed later this evening or early tomorrow morning. If you see that by Friday, which is tomorrow, about 2 p.m., you do not get your emailed certificate, again, you can click on the reply to the email that GoToWebinar will send you, as well as our contact information will be at the end of the presentation, and you're welcome to take a screenshot or a photo with your cell phone and have our contact information, and we will be happy to assist you.
Thank you, Amy. So now we're going to just talk about what instructional support is. So last week, we had our coaches, Deborah and Gretel. They reviewed what instructional support is. They discussed concept development, quality of feedback, and language modeling. And as you can see here, this is what pre-K looks at. They looks at emotional support. We look at classroom organization. And last week, the focus was on concept development, quality of feedback, and language modeling. Now, for the dimensions of instructional support, today we are going to be focusing on concept development. Instructional support looks at how we help children learn to solve problems, reason, and think. That would be concept development. How teachers use feedback to expand and deepen skills and knowledge. That would be quality of feedback. And how teachers help children to develop more complex language skills. That would be language modeling. So this training, the focus is going to be on concept development. Next Thursday, we are actually having another training. It's going to be facilitated by Deborah and Agnieszka, and they are going to be discussing quality of feedback. And then the following Thursday, we are going to have another training to discuss language modeling, and that will be facilitated by Raina and Julio. So we hope that you're going to be able to attend and hear all of that wonderful information as well. So why is concept development so tricky? Concept development can be a tough dimension because it's not always simple to define. The name alone can be confusing. I know the first time I heard the term concept development, I had to think about it for a moment to try to figure out exactly what that entailed. So I know that many teachers probably assume that concept development is about developing a specific concept. But it's more than that. It's more than just relaying of facts or information. When effective concept development's happening, the teachers are helping children find answers on their own. And they're really challenging them to think about those hows and whys of learning. The children have a chance to be creative. They can generate their own ideas and products. They can really understand the world around them through things like experimentation and brainstorming. In concept development, teachers use strategies and questions to help children really think deeply about concepts and ideas and focus their attention on the process of coming up with solutions to a problem, rather than just getting that correct answer. Children learn more and understand concepts and ideas better when teachers provide them with opportunities to analyze and problem solve, instead of just memorizing and reciting facts, such as identifying letters or numbers in circle, which we think of really as something that's called rote instruction. Children really do need to know their letters and numbers, but that isn't challenging them to think, which is what concept development is really all about. Developing those higher order thinking skills, teachers promoting those interactions so that they're able to develop these things. And when it's done well, teachers can help children make connections to big ideas and help them start to make sense of the information that's coming in. So what is concept development all about? In the previous slide, you heard me mention that encouraging of children to develop higher order thinking skills, and continue to think about that throughout the presentation. You heard words like analysis and reasoning, experimentation, brainstorming, problem solving. All of these put together help children reach a deeper understanding of concepts. So there are 4 indicators, and you can see those. They're the words that are written across the top. They're analysis and reasoning, creating, integration, and connections to the real world. So these indicators describe a behavior that gives us a picture of the overall quality of interactions that you're having with your children. The behavioral markers, those you can see going across down at the bottom. It's the why and the how questions, the planning, that integrates with previous knowledge, the real world applications. Those are examples of the 4 indicators that Amy and I are going to be discussing in detail as we continue on in the presentation. So sit back, turn your thinking caps on, and get ready to learn all about concept development with us.
Okay, so we prepared a little poll for you today, but before we launch the poll, Tiffany, I just want to address that we've been getting a lot of comments regarding one of the handouts not being able to download. So later this afternoon, Tiffany and I will email everyone who is in attendance today with the email address that you used for your registration. We will just go ahead and send you all of the handouts. And I apologize for the inconvenience with the downloading. That might be a glitch in GoToWebinar, and we don't have really any control over that, but we do want you to have the information. So we will be sending that email to you later today. Okay, so now tell us what you think. What does encouraging children to think deeply look like? Is it encouraging children to generate their own ideas, or drilling children on facts or skills? And Tiffany will be launching the poll right
now.
So what does encouraging children to think deeply look like?
So now we have 26% voted. 42%. We're at 54. Keep voting. Okay, we're at 63, 64.
And don't worry if you are not sure, just go ahead and take your best guess. How are we doing, Tiffany?
75%. Okay, we're going to give it another minute. So please get your votes in. 77%, so they're slowly coming in. 78.
I think to be respectful for everyone's time, when we get to 80%, we can close the poll.
I agree, we're at 79.
Woo, woo, one more.
Okay, we're at 80, so we're going to close the poll up. 81. Okay, and if you didn't get a chance to vote, then you can put whatever your response would be in the questions box, because we do want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I'm going to close the poll now. And I'm going to share the results with you all.
Awesome. Most people responded with encouraging children to generate their own ideas. So as Tiffany mentioned, we do need children to learn certain facts and skills. And we will be talking about that and, differentiating that between that and generating their own ideas during the presentation. But thank you so much for participating in our poll. And as Tiffany said, you can go ahead if you did not get a chance to vote and put it in the comments box when we run the report after the presentation to send you your handouts. We will get to see all of your responses. So why is it important to promote children's higher order thinking skills? Well, because when we support children's higher order thinking skills, we help them to generalize knowledge and allow them to apply what they've learned in one situation to a new situation. So again, they can memorize facts and be able to regurgitate information. But true learning happens when children can take knowledge and apply it to any situation that where it fits. And that they can do that independently. So using information to understand their world. So again, memorizing certain facts is important, but we also want children to be able to understand how the information that they are acquiring applies to the world that they live in and what's relevant to them. It also helps to begin the understanding of the process of learning so that children become active, lifelong learners. We know we have them during the most important, critical years of their lives in early childhood settings, and we want to build them up so that when they get to school, they will be active, lifelong learners. And you have some little pictures in the slide that show ways that children are active learners. Okay, so what do interactions look like when you're working on concept development? One of the things that's very important is they should be initiated by the teacher. And the focus should be on the process of learning, not on the product that is produced. And we'll talk more about that in depth as we get through the presentation. And when I say initiated by the teacher, that doesn't preclude that we also want to make sure that we're using things that are of interest to the children and relevant to their lives. But as the teacher, you are the facilitator of their learning. So we want to make sure that everything that we do is intentional, and it's not specifically about teaching specific concepts. Again, the rote instruction that Tiffany had mentioned earlier, that we're encouraging children to think. And with this, they will sustain that deeper level of understanding. So it's not they're learning this for right now, it's they're learning this to carry it through and apply it to everything else that they're going to be learning later on.
And before I change to the next slide, I just wanted to say that I was looking through the question box and I saw that some of you that did not get a chance to vote on the poll wrote in your answers, and you all said encouraging children to generate their own ideas. So great, thank you for that.
Thank you, Tiffany.
You're welcome, Amy.
Okay, so what questions should you be asking yourself? Next slide, please. Thank you. What questions should you be asking yourself when you're thinking about concept development? We're providing just 3, which is how can you encourage children to wonder and think deeply? And again, we're going to be giving you some examples that you can use to take back to your classroom. What do you think children wonder about, and why is it important to find out? And how can you support children's thinking. So these are the things that you, as the teacher, the facilitator of the children's learning, have to consider when you're planning your activities and putting together the questions that you want to make sure that you ask during those activities.
Okay, so now we're going to look at how we describe the concept development indicators. So we have the 4 that I mentioned earlier. We have analysis and reasoning, creating, integration, and connections to the real world. And if you look at the pictures, you can just imagine how concept development is actually being implemented in the classroom. You can see children playing with blocks and imagine all of the different questions that the teachers are asking of the children, and her holding, in the other picture, the little girl holding the hourglass and what questions could be asked with her. Okay. So really, when we talk about analysis and reasoning, it's important to point out that we're not focusing on rote memorization or the correctness of answers, and we did mention that before. Instead, we're looking for ways you as teachers use discussions and activities that encourage children's thinking. Because young children are naturals at analysis and reasoning. They want to understand. They want to be able to solve problems, experiment, and compare. And we can help them. Teachers can do this by asking those how and why questions, as well as providing opportunities for children to problem solve, predict, classify, and evaluate. And we're going to delve deeper into these terms as we go further in the presentation. One simple way to think about analysis and reasoning is examining the facts to find reasons for things that we know or we experience. When children get a chance to ask questions, predict, classify, compare, or evaluate, they're practicing these analysis and reasoning skills. But children need adults to practice these thinking skills at a deeper level. So with analysis and reasoning, we want to make sure that we're providing tasks where children can observe, predict, and experiment. In all 3 pictures that you see, the children are doing that. They're observing, they're predicting, they're experimenting. You know, in the first picture, the children brought worms back inside after playing on the playground. They got to observe them, they got to predict what would happen if they put leaves in the container, and experiment by actually putting the leaves in and checking each day to make sure, you know, they could see what happened. Did the worms actually eat those leaves? You know, in that last picture, it's what objects will roll down the ramp, selecting different objects from the classroom and predicting which one will roll down the ramp, which ones would roll furthest, and things like that. In that second picture, you have children that got a chance to observe ladybug larvae, and they got to see them grow, eat, and change, and, you know, predict what do they eat, or what will happen if we put another or different type of ladybug, you know, in the container, or what would happen if we release them, you know, outside on the playground. If we open the ladybug dome, where will they go? So these are all different questions and activities that you can ask your children to help them observe, to help them make those predictions, and to see what happens when they actually do their own experiments. So now we have some sentence prompts to help you keep challenging and supporting your children. So we have those how and why questions. Some sentence prompts that you can use would be, why do you think? And then, you know, whatever it was that you're trying to ask. How does that work? How do we know? You can ask prediction and experimentation questions. Which one do you think will? Let's see what happens when we. You can ask comparison and classification questions. What's the difference between a butterfly and a dragonfly? How can we sort these? Which ones go together? You can ask questions to help them problem solve. How could we make it go faster? Uh-oh, we have a problem here. How are we going to figure this out? What would you do if were to happen? And then you can ask questions that help them evaluate. What happened? Is this a good idea? Encouraging children to develop their thinking skills leads to deeper understanding of these concepts. Okay. So now we have some question starters for different activities to share with you. We can really promote higher order thinking through analysis and reasoning in everyday tasks. So we really wanted to share these sentence starters with you, or really question starters, so that you can see that there's a lot of different activities that you can do to help children figure out how things fit together and anticipate what might happen. So for example, I know all of your children play with blocks on a daily basis. So you can ask these problem-solving questions. Can you fix the ramp with these blocks? What other materials might you need? I want to build a bridge. How can I do that? Prediction and experimentation. My tower keeps falling. How many blocks can you add before it falls? What will happen if I pull this block out? Classification and comparison. Do you have more blocks in your tower than mine? How do you know? Evaluation questions. Were you able to fix the ramp? How did you figure that out? Everyone eats snack every day, so we have some questions for prepping for snack. Why how questions. Why do these strawberries have stems? Problem solving. We don't eat the stem. What can we do with it? What else can we try? And classification comparison. I like raspberries. How are strawberries and raspberries alike? How are they different? Can you find the biggest strawberry? So really, these are all different questions that you can use throughout the day with your children. And these are activities that you do on a daily basis, such as reading a book, asking those wow and how questions, the why and the how questions. How do you think the story will end? Why do you think the character is sad? Problem solving. The animals are fighting. How could they solve their problem? Why might that work? Prediction experimentation. What do you think she will do next? Let's record our predictions so we can remember at the end of the book. Evaluation. What did you think of the book? What was your favorite part? If you go on a nature walk, and we are going to actually have a couple of nature walk examples for you later on as well. So stay tuned for that. But we can ask how or why questions. This flower pricked me. Why does it have thorns? How is that like an animal's teeth? Problem solving. You want to carry all of those rocks, but they keep falling. It seems like you have too many to fit in your hands. What solution could we come up with? What else might work? Prediction experimentation. I wonder how many rocks could fit in this cup. What do you think? Why do you think that? And classification comparison. How are these two leaves different? Can you find another leaf with a stem like this? So really, when you think about all of this, the ability to think critically is what allows us to gain a deeper understanding of concepts. That's why it's important that we help our children build these critical thinking skills. It's not enough for us just to ask a single prediction, problem solving, or comparison question. Really, it's that back and forth conversation between you and the children that follow an activity that you're doing with your children. That's what matters the most. This is how you can keep challenging and supporting your children throughout the day.
Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about creating. We encourage children to create by providing them with opportunities to come up with their own ideas. So rather than always directing the children, effective teachers will encourage children to brainstorm, plan, and produce their own products. So in the picture that we have here on the right, you see children with little clipboards, and they are jotting something down that they are observing. Right before this activity where they went outside, they had to brainstorm. They had to consider what were they going to be doing when they got outside? What are the types of things that they're observing? What type of data are they looking at that they want to record on their clipboards? Now they're in the phase where they're observing, and when they come back inside, they will probably have the conversation of what is it exactly that they saw. They could share with each other their drawings or their writings, pre-writings that they have on their clipboards to show exactly what it is that they saw. And these are the concepts that are open-ended, so there is never anything that is wrong. And we will give you some strategies to assist with that, because we know that sometimes the things that they come up with may not be the things that are most practical or possible even, but we don't want to shut down children's creativity. So there are ways that we can manage those responses in a way that's respectful to the child, but still leading them down the path that we want them to go to, because we do want them to really understand how things truly are. Create opportunities for children to brainstorm, plan, and solve problems. These pictures show what looks like a pre-K recycle park. So they had to brainstorm what would they do with all of these materials that could become garbage, but maybe they could become something else. And the children then planned what would they do with all of these recyclable materials, and their problem solving is what they did with them. So they decided to reuse everything. And as you can see, there are some art they created with these recyclable materials. They might save some of these recyclable materials for other activities to play with as sensory items in these little sensory bins that we see on the side. So again, this was an opportunity for children to brainstorm, plan, and to create and solve the problem of what to do with all of these materials in a way that was appropriate for them. So we want to think about brainstorming as, what can we build? And that's a concept that's applied to many different things. In the previous slide, we saw it applied to these recyclable materials. The plan is, well, how then can we build it? So you want to prompt the children to think about what would they need, how would they actually go about building whatever it is that they want to build. And again, we may get some responses that are not the most probable or possible. And so that's the opportunity to guide them through their thought process and help them to come to conclusions where they actually can implement these things. And then in the produce stage, we're just building what it is that we planned that we were going to build. And here we provide some examples of sentence prompts that you can use at each stage of creating. You're welcome to take a picture of these. So during brainstorming, you may want to ask, how might you build that? And what other blank can you think of? Let's make a list of all of the things that we can think of, all of the items, all of the ingredients, all of the materials. In the planning stage, you would want to ask, what will we need if we wanted to make blank? And let's figure out how we would do or make that. Once we're in the producing stage, okay, now that we've planned it, let's make it. Let's get to it. We're making a blank. Want to help? So you want to encourage other children to join in. And let's get started. Positive affirmations and reaffirmations for the children during their creative process. So here's a strategy, and I know that some of you may have been, again, as Tiffany mentioned, on Deborah and Gretel's webinar from last Thursday, where this strategy was introduced, and we feel that it's worth revisiting this strategy because it is very important, and it kind of goes along with what we've been saying about making sure that when children come up with ideas or responses to our questions that maybe are not exactly what we were looking for, rather than shut them down and tell them that that's not correct, we like the yes and method. So no matter what the child says, we accept it by saying yes, and then we modify it through the conversation by adding to it. That's the and part. So here we have an example. Tiffany, if you could help me with this, would you be the child for me?
Of course I will.
So what would we take to a barbecue?
Hamburgers.
Yes, those would be good to eat. And I wonder what else we could bring for our lunch. So we accept the answer the child gives, but because that's not the answer that we were expecting or looking for, we want to extend it and provide them an opportunity to come up with another answer. Here is another good slide that you can take a screenshot or a picture of. These are ways that you can promote creating from the concept development dimension in different areas of the classroom. So during language arts, you want to invite the children to maybe write and act out their own stories. This would be a great opportunity for them to maybe have costumes. They can create their own scenery. They can plan out their roles. They can look for props around the classroom that they would use to act out their story. Something that we love, and we have a training on story time, and we like to always include having the children change the ending to a story. So you can take their favorite story and then ask them, if you were the author, how would you have ended the story? Or how would you like to see the story end? How could we change it? What would you do? These are ways for children through language arts to create. During science, again, nature walks. Where will we go? What will we look for? How might we collect those? If they say they want to bring something back to the classroom, you want to ask them, well, how are we going to do that? How would we bring that back to the classroom? What will we do when we bring it back to the classroom? So what are our intentions with this? Put some dirt and paper and plastic in the water table and say, our river is dirty. How would we clean this up? What tools would we use? And then that could lead into a whole discussion on pollution and conservation and why our planet is important for us to be good citizens and keep it clean. In the centers and free play, maybe putting in some open-ended items such as boxes, craft materials, things that they can use independently to create new things, and that they can use in different ways, that there's no one right way to use that material. And ask them, what can we create? How will you do it? You want to plan. You want to have them plan when they're going to go to the centers. What do you want to make? What do you want to do? How will you make it? And what materials do you need? Even when we're setting up the classroom, you may want to include them in some of that. This will get some of that brainstorming going. Classroom rules. Ask them about the classroom rules and why they're important and what rules would we need in our classroom. That's something that's usually done at the beginning of the year, but we think that as the year goes on and children, new children come in, or there's a change in the classroom environment, we see children growing and developing, and things can come up. That might be another time to revisit the classroom rules and find out if we think we need to add something to our classroom rules. Involve students in planning lessons. What do you think we should study next? Then you know what they're interested in. What do we know? What do we need to know about this? And where would we get this information? Include them in helping you prepare for your lessons. when we're decorating the room. So you have a new theme and you can ask them, how can we make our room look like the ocean? What will we need to do? What materials do we need? How would we hang these items in our classroom? Where in the classroom would it be best for us to tape these up? Those are the types of questions that get children thinking. It's totally out of the box, and it creates interest in then continuing with that activity.
So now we wanted to share some asking children questions tips for you. So we have open-ended questions. Those are the questions that we look at applying, analyzing, problem solving, predicting, and creating. Those would be those questions like the why questions, the how questions. Why do you think the car rolled so fast? Why are you moving so quickly around the classroom? How did you make the water turn blue? How can we share these markers? And then you have more of those close-ended questions. Those are more of those questions that require memorization or recall. With those questions, those are like the when questions, the where, the who, the is. When are you going to the park? Where did you find that rock? Who is in the block area? Is that the tower you just built? So with these, they're not really engaging the children in those rich experiences. They're not challenging them to think. But when we ask them those why, those how, those ones that really get them to predict, to create, to problem solve, that's what's going to be those kinds of questions that are going to really challenge their thinking and really promote that higher order thinking process for them. Okay. So now we wanted to talk to you about integration. It's not enough to just simply mention a connection in passing. Highly effective integration requires teachers to consistently make these connections. Teachers can demonstrate effective integration in two ways. They can link concepts and activities to one another, and by linking concepts and activities to previous learning so that children can connect ideas. When children connect concepts and new ideas to what they already know, they're developing a deeper understanding of those concepts and integrating this new information. So when you're thinking about activities, purposefully choose learning activities, both within a given day and over time, that focus on similar concepts. Make connections clear among these concepts so that children can apply their understanding to these new situations. You can ask questions to get them to think out loud. That's what we really want to do. You can see in the picture that these two children are holding magnifying glasses and they're looking at a butterfly from the science area. So you could say that thinking out loud, I noticed you were looking at a butterfly from our science area. Have you ever seen a butterfly flying outside? And this is really going to connect a concept for them. They're thinking about that butterfly that they have in the science area, but also the different times that they've seen butterflies flying outside as well. So continuing on with integration, you want to build on children's natural curiosity by drawing upon everyday experiences and connecting previous knowledge. It's important that teachers carefully observe what's interesting to children. You're building on what children are interested in and curious about. That's how you're going to support their learning in a way that's relevant and meaningful to their everyday experiences. So you can see here in these two pictures, the children are all engaged in what they're doing. In the first picture, they're planting. The teacher could say, oh, we're putting seeds in the soil just like the boy did in the book we read during story. So that's connecting that concept for them. They're planting now, just like in the previous story that the teacher read as well. And then in that second picture, the children are pretending to work in a doctor's office. The teacher could say, I see you're listening to the pig's heartbeat. Have you gone to the doctor's office before? What happened when you visited the doctor? So that's allowing the children in both pictures to make those connections to their everyday experiences. And it's relating them also to real life situations that happen in their lives on a daily basis. So when children reach new levels of understanding as a result of teachers frequently asking questions related to or explicitly stating how two ideas are related. That's really how these children reach new levels of understanding. You heard us mention earlier that concept development is all about helping children think about the how and the why of things. Understanding the how and the why always involves integrating concepts. We can think about it as first that analysis part. We're identifying these concepts, and then we're linking them together. That would be that integration piece. When we see this happening, a teacher is intentionally guiding children through a series of connections, that thinking out loud I mentioned in the previous slide. So an example of this could be the hungry caterpillar's cocoon is kind of like he's all wrapped up in a snuggly blanket, isn't it? So if the examples you're giving to children don't lead them to uncover connections for themselves, you can give them hints. And we like to call this scaffolding. And you'll hear a lot more about scaffolding in the quality of feedback training next Thursday. But you can give them those hints. What was he doing while he was inside the cocoon? What are you doing when you're wrapped up in a blanket? So that's really giving them some more assistance. And if they need even more than that, then clearly point out those connections. In the end, we really want children to reach new levels of understanding as a result of the connections. So if they need a little assistance, provide it for them, because that's how they're going to learn how to make the connections for themselves. So speaking of connections, we're going to talk now about connections to the real world. Connections to the real world is all about how the child, with support from an adult, links, associates, or relates this information to something they understand already. These real-world connections happen when teachers relate concepts and activities to children's daily lives and experiences. That connecting concepts to the real world makes learning really more meaningful for children. So when you're explaining a concept, use examples that are likely to occur in their lives and encourage them to add their own. So you can see in both pictures we have here, the first one is sequencing brushing your teeth. And the next picture, the boy is actually brushing his teeth. So if you're teaching children about sequencing, ask them to tell you the order of steps for brushing their teeth or getting ready for school. And this is making that connection to their real world. When you give children examples that they can relate to, it really stimulates their thinking. It builds connections and helps them build an understanding of the world around them. So it can be hard for teachers to build concept development into their day, since it involves providing children with opportunities for that higher order thinking that we keep mentioning. But the good news is that reading stories to children almost always consistently gives teachers opportunities to help children connect concepts from books to their own lives. To make learning come alive for children, teachers can plan questions that encourage children to connect concepts from the story to their world. Because really almost every book contains a central conflict or concept for children to consider in their own lives. Making these real-world connections is so important. Not just because we're telling you that this is an indicator for concept development, but also because it can foster a love of learning for years to come. So that's why it's so important that you're really making these connections for children and helping them make the connections on their own. So now we do have some ways that you can encourage children to make connections. You can ask them questions like, how would you feel if this happened to you? Has anything like this ever happened in your life? What did you do? If this happened in school, what would you do about it? How do you think the character feels? Tell me about a time you felt that way. And have you ever been to a place like this? What was it like?
So when we're looking at ways to help children reach that deeper understanding of concepts, we want to focus on the understanding of the concept. So it's, again, the process of the child coming up with the solution to the problem rather than just getting that correct answer. We want to encourage the use of their analysis and reasoning, asking them questions. How would you feel if this happened to you? promoting the exploration of the concepts and linking the concept across activities, applying it to the real world. Tiffany spent some time talking about those slides, giving some examples about ways to ensure that we are connecting linking these concepts across different activities, but also applying them to the real world, because it becomes more relevant to the child, and it helps them to be able to more deeply understand. These things take time to plan. These are not those informal moments. These are things that we need to really think about how we are going to prompt the children to think, and using specific questions that will help them to come to the answers that help them build that higher order thinking. And we always want to encourage children's creativity. So that's why the brainstorming is so important. Giving them the opportunity to decide what materials they should use in a certain activity or a certain type of play that they want to engage in. So as you see in this picture here, we have the little girl that is in the dramatic play, and she wants to cook. That's her plan for today. So you would want to ask her questions like, well, what are you making? Why do you want to make that? What ingredients do you need for that? And let's say if she says, well, I want to make a soup, and there's an ingredient that she says that maybe is a little bit different, you may want to ask her, well, have you ever had soup with that ingredient, and how did it taste like? If you haven't had it, why would you want to use that ingredient, and what do you think it would taste like when you put that in there? So again, we don't want to say that's wrong, or that sounds silly. We want to keep prompting the children to see why it is that they think the way they think. Okay, so again, we're asking children those how and why questions. How did you make your tower so strong and tall? Why would this balloon float and then this balloon is sinking to the floor? What's the difference between the two? You want to set up experiments to test ideas. So maybe something simple is ice. Telling them we have 2 ice cubes. We're going to put one outside the classroom and we're going to leave one inside the classroom. Which one do you think is going to melt fastest? Have them predict. Ask them why they think the way they do. Then, well, let's go try it and find out. And then you can have a whole conversation about what differences there were between the ice inside and versus outside. Comparing and classifying items. Wow, look at our housekeeping area. All the food is mixed up now, but we only have 3 baskets to put it in. How are we going to sort it? Providing opportunities, again, for creativity. Oh, you want to build a new marble run. What do you think it'll look like? What do you need to build it? Then you send them off, go for it. Okay, so some things to keep in mind when you are asking questions. You want to plan your questions. You have to keep in mind the development of the child. So as much as we want to challenge them and we want to stretch their thinking, we also want them to be successful. We want to make sure that the questions that we're crafting and that we're using to prompt their thinking are questions that are appropriate to the developmental stage where they're at. And that could be very individualized. Children are developing in different ways. You get to know your children and you will know what types of questions best fit certain children. You also want to take into account their prior knowledge. If you want to have some deep discussions about a specific topic, make sure that you've done the prior knowledge work, that you've introduced this topic to them, that they've learned about it over some time, a couple of weeks, maybe even a month, that they've had many different opportunities to absorb this knowledge in different ways, in a variety of ways, in a variety of modalities, using different materials, so that then they have that prior knowledge to be able to think more deeply. Questions like, I wonder if, I wonder what would happen, those I wonder questions, or what do you notice? Those are very open-ended questions that will help children to think a little bit more deeply. Don't be afraid of big words. Advanced language is very important, and it's, again, another way that you can introduce words to the children and make those connections at the same time, because you would connect it to words that they already are familiar with. If you've taken any of our language development webinars, and there's a couple coming up. I think there's one, Let's Talk, in the pre-K classroom on May 21st, that will talk a little bit more about advanced language and language modeling. Make sure to allow for wait time. Children need to process what you're asking them, especially in the beginning. It's almost like something that you all need to practice. You need to give them the opportunity to learn how to think about these deep questions. Give them a little bit of time to process it so that they can come up with their answers, so they're not just guessing at things and just blurting out a response just to be participatory. You want them to really have that opportunity to think before they can respond, and that way they can really respond with something a little more deep. Ask questions and make comments by extending, using possibly the yes and method that we've already gone over. And remember to listen. So you're asking the questions, you want to ask deep questions, but you also want to make sure that you're listening to the response you're getting, because children will start to pick up if you're not really listening to what they're telling you. And so we have this lovely quote: as you ask children questions, remember to really listen to their responses. As an active listener, demonstrate your interest in the children's ideas and your openness to different possibilities, rather than listening for the expected right answer. This is from Rebecca Isabel and Sonia Akiki Yashiwa. And if you want to talk to children about why we're doing this, why are we asking all these questions, it's great to include them. Tell them, this is going to make your brain stronger. It's like exercise for your mind. The same way that we go out into the playground and we run and get our big muscles strong, we want to exercise our brain. It's like looking at things with a magnifying glass. We're zooming in on a photo. We're taking our ideas from all the way up here and bringing them to life with all of the materials in our classroom.
So now we're going to look at some videos that you'll get a chance to see concept development put into practice. So the first one is called Promoting Thinking Skills in a Discussion of a Book's Classification. So as you watch this video, look for how the teacher asks an open-ended question, how she leads an instructional discussion, and how she helps children classify books.
About that. But is this an information book?
Yeah.
Why not? Tell me why. Tell me why this is a story. Why is this a fiction story? You can tell me. Amelia, why is this a fiction story?
Because animals don't paint.
Because animals usually don't paint. You're right.
Elephants do.
They could hold it with their trunk. So if maybe we'd have an information book about that. Why else can you tell me that this is not an information book, that it is a fiction book? Why else is this a fiction book? How do you know? Theo? How else do you know that this is a fiction book?
Animals don't live in real houses.
Animals don't live in real houses. They might have shelter and protection like in caves, but they don't live in houses like this. Do they live in houses?
No.
No, not like we live in houses.
But owners let their pets go inside their house.
Some owners let some pets go inside. Would you let a pig go inside your house usually?
No.
Not typically. Sometimes there are small pet pigs that people will. Would you think this is a moose? Would you let that go, this beast go inside your? No. Let's read.
About a guinea pig?
You could have a guinea pig that is
I
a
have
much
a guinea
smaller
pig.
pig. You do have a guinea pig. So let's read. And you know what else I noticed? These are not real photos. And remember, most of the time in our information books, Brian, there are real photos.
Okay. So as you saw in the video, the teacher used analysis and reasoning. She uses a discussion to encourage this by clarification. She asked open-ended questions. Why is this a fiction story? To help children gain a deeper understanding about that book's classification. She exhibited creating when she encouraged children to generate their own ideas by seeking multiple responses. How else do you know this is a fiction book? And she showed connections to the real world when she connected the discussion to the children's lives when one child said, but owners let their pets go inside their house. She prompted them to think about whether they would allow the animals in the book into their own homes by asking, would you let a pig go into your house usually? So now we are going to look at a second video. And we had talked about it before. This one is going to be a nature walk. So as you watch this video, look for how the teacher supports children's analysis and reasoning skills, helps children connect ideas, and helps children make predictions.
My friends, listen. Yesterday, we read a book about plants. It was called Plants Are Everywhere. And we saw plants growing in all different places, like the forest, and the desert, and the ocean, and next to that big river or pond. So today, guys, some of you thought we might find a river or an ocean or a pond right around here. Have we ever seen one yet? No. When we're going around, we can look, but do you still think we might see some plants here at school?
Yeah.
What kind of plants do you think we might see?
Blue.
Not color, what kind? Not what
Like
color.
a bush.
A bush. Kiss your brain. We might see a bush. What else might we see?
Not a tree.
A tree. We might see a tree. Very good job. We might see leaves growing on a tree or a bush.
And maybe color rocks.
Is a house a plant?
No.
Is a road a plant?
No. Grass.
Grass. Is grass a plant?
Yeah.
Yes, grass is a type of plant. It is alive and it is growing.
So in that video, there were many instances of the teacher encouraging children to engage in instructionally supportive interactions. For example, she used prediction in asking children what kinds of plants they might see when they are going around. She connected ideas about the plants with the book they read the day before. Both of these interactions support the development of children's logic and reasoning skills. She also asked open-ended questions such as, what else might we see to help them think about other possible plants they could see while on a nature walk? So both of these were great examples of how to get children to use their analysis and reasoning skills, how to answer those how and why questions. And now we're going to look at our third video. It's called Blubber Experiment. So you can imagine what it's about. As you watch this video, look for how the teacher asks open-ended questions, encourages children to make predictions, and helps connect ideas for children.
Ariana, this is, inside here is shortening. It's kind of like the blubber on the polar bear. If a polar bear is in ice water and if your hand's in here, covered with the blubber, what do you predict will happen? What do you think will happen? Do you think your hand will be cold or it will be warm? Warm. Let's try and see. Let's try and see. Ariana predicted that it would be warm. Her hand will be warm. And make sure we cover it because we want to make sure to protect it. Are you ready? Put your hand in there. Let's put your other hand on the other side so you can feel without the blubber and with the blubber.
Cold?
Which hand feels colder?
This one.
That hand. How come that hand feels colder?
It don't have the bubble.
You're right. It doesn't have the blubber. You're right.
I
So
got my hand sticking.
if this was a polar bear right here, would he be warm? If that was a polar bear there without blubber, would he be warm?
No.
Then he couldn't survive in the cold, could he? This one could, right?
Yeah.
Good job. So what you predict is that your hand will be warm, and it was, right?
I'm gonna try again.
So as you can see in that video about the blubber, the teacher encouraged the children to predict which hand would feel cold and which one would stay the same. She connected ideas about the blubber with how polar bears are able to stay warm. So she encouraged the children to their previous knowledge about polar bears to predict if they will feel warm or cold without the blubber. She asked open-ended questions such as, how come that hand feels colder? To encourage them to think deeply about why her hand felt cold. Now we have one more video to share with you. It's about roly-polies. So as you watch the video, look for how the teacher leads an instructional discussion, builds on children's curiosity, asks open-ended questions, and helps children connect previous knowledge.
Yesterday during small group time, we went outside to look for the roly-polies, remember?
Yeah.
Where did we go find the roly-polies?
In the grass. It's so wet.
The roly-polies live in the dark, wet, moist areas. How do you know that?
Because it lives under the dirt.
Because it lives under the dirt. Yes, and where it's dark. Today we're going to observe our roly-polies. And we're going to use our senses to find something out. We may use our eyes to look at the roly-polies, or we need to touch them to find out what it feels like. Oh, here's one. That's a real roly-poly. Huh? I'm going to pass them out, yes.
It tickles.
Does it tickle when you touch it?
Yeah.
So when you pick it up, it tickles?
Oh, my baby wants to have it.
Oh, it does tickle. You're right.
My baby one, my baby.
How do you know that that's the baby one?
That one is white.
It's white. Remember when we talked about during small group time that the roly-polies that are born are white and clear?
I loved it.
Are you using your magnifying glass to look at the roly-poly? Oh, sometimes we might find some worms inside the soil. Does the worm look like the roly-poly?
No.
No, what does that worm look like? It wiggles. Yours is crawling up your hand.
So I don't know about all of you, but I think that teacher was extremely brave to bring all of those roly-polies back into the classroom. The bravest I ever got was,
Yeah, she's a champ, Tiffany.
yeah, the only thing I did when I was a teacher, we did caterpillars, butterflies, ladybugs. We even brought in an inchworm before. But the roly-polies are a great experience if you're brave enough to do that. The teacher, she led an instructional discussion to let them know that they were going to observe the roly-polies and use their senses, their eyes to look at the roly-polies, their hands to touch them and see what they felt like. She really let them observe these roly-polies because they found them outside in the dirt. So she followed their lead. She built on their curiosity by bringing them back into the classroom, and she let them explore the roly-polies, figure out why they rolled, and use their senses to really observe them. She asked those open-ended questions like, roly-polies live in dark, wet, moist areas. How do you know that? She also asked another open-ended question. How do you know it's the baby one? When a child responded by saying it's white. And she used integration to connect previous knowledge by saying, remember we talked about it in small group time that the roly-polies are born white? So this teacher was able to build on their curiosity. She was able to connect previous knowledge, and she was able to ask those how and those why questions to get them really engaged and able to exhibit that higher order thinking. So now we have another poll for you. It's, when can teachers plan ways to embed meaningful interactions with children that help them to think deeply? So once again, if you're not able to use the poll, then you can always write your answers in the question box. So it's during small group time, story time, blocks, or across the day. What do you think?
And remember, just take your best answer. Select your best answer.
We're going to give it another minute.
Tiffany, we have some responses in the questions box that we'll share out after we close our poll.
Okay.
Thank you so much for all your great participation today.
Okay, we're at 65% voted, 66. When we get to 70, we're going to close it just for the sake of time. And then you can always write your answers in the question box. Okay, I am going to close the poll now, and I'm going to share the results with you. And it looks like we have a majority of you felt that children can really engage in these interactions across the day. And you're absolutely right. They can engage in these interactions in small group time, blocks, and story, but really it's across the day that we really want to make sure that we're planning ways to embed that meaningful interaction with students. And then Amy is going to get into more deeply some of those concept development activities that you can see throughout the day.
We apologize for the little delay. There sometimes is a little delay in the slide presentation. It could be a little glitch in GoToWebinar when we have high attendance at our webinars. We've noticed that there's a little bit of a delay. So thank you so much for being patient with us with this wonderful new technology that we get to use. So as Tiffany said, here are some ways to do concept development across the day. So during arrival, you can ask them open-ended questions about things that happened either at home, on the way to school, the night before. During transitions, you want to, let's say, when children are going from circle time to the center time, you want to make sure that they are connecting maybe the letters of their name to some of the environmental print in the classroom. During meal times, talking and brainstorming about why it's important to eat healthy foods and what are the healthy foods. Blocks are always amazing for creating and experimenting, asking them questions on how things are built and what do they need and why did that structure that you build fall down. In dramatic play, having them also brainstorm and problem solve as they role play using different dress-up clothes or just the materials in that dramatic play area. Art time is always a great time for the process, brainstorming, planning, and producing when you're asking those great questions about what would it look like if you would have changed and used a different color? What if instead of a straight line, you would have used a wiggly line? What were you thinking when you started creating this artwork? How did it make you feel while you were creating this artwork? And during story time, we always talk about it in our story time training, the picture walk, asking them to predict. What do you think the story is going to be about? What do you think is going to happen on the next page? Teachers can look at the schedule and plan ways to embed meaningful interactions with children that help them to think deeply across the day.
Okay, so now really when you think about concept development, you can plan lessons by creating one plan for each interest area currently present in your classroom, as well as one for each major component of your day, like small groups, whole groups, snacks, and meals. This activity is a small group activity called comparing sizes, and our materials are a ball, a tennis ball, a soccer ball, and a beach ball. So you might get something like this in your curriculum, and these are some answers that you can, and sort of questions really, that you can use to promote that concept development. So the first one for analysis and reasoning is, I have 3 pictures here. How are these pictures the same? How are they different? How could we figure out if things are small or medium or large? So asking those open-ended, thought-provoking questions. For creating, I have 3 cards here with pictures on them. What could I do with these cards? I see there are many other objects on the table. What could we do with these objects? Helping them to brainstorm and come up with their own ideas. For integration, this is reminding me of yesterday's story, The 3 Bears. Why is it reminding me of that story? What other things do we have in our room that are small, medium, and large? The mixing bowls in our house are small, medium, and large. The measuring spoons that we used to make Play-Doh yesterday fit inside each other. There was a big tablespoon, a medium teaspoon, and a small half teaspoon. So these were all ways that you can show that integration, relating activities that you've done to the current activity and connections to the real world. What things do we have in our houses, parks, or stores that are small, medium, and large? So really, this lesson plan is just the first step. The most important part is engaging your students in strategies on the lesson planning sheet. That's how you really can embed more concept development into the activities that you plan. So now we have an activity called predicting and experimenting with eggs. So as you can see here, you can ask children to make predictions. You can ask them to compare the outcomes in an experiment, and you can prompt them to make connections to the real world. This one is Humpty Dumpty. So you can get a little box or a block as your wall. You can do the Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall rhyme. You can have them say that as you take 2 eggs, one that's cooked and one that's uncooked, and have them predict what's going to happen. And then when they fall and one breaks, how come this one broke and all the insides came out? Why didn't the other one break? And you can ask them these questions and really get them to predict, and then get them to experiment, and then see exactly what happens. And then you can relate it to their lives if you ask them, do you have eggs like that in your house? And really get them to think about that activity and what happened when either the boiled egg fell or when the uncooked egg fell. Okay, so now we have another activity. It's brainstorming about how long a string could be. So with this activity, we have a book, and obviously we have a lot of white string. So you can ask children to brainstorm about why they use the string. For example, to measure how long an object is. And you can prompt them to make connections to the real world. Okay. So now we have a little story to read to you, all about the string. Tell me, bird, just how long can a string be? Well, little ant, it all depends. On what it will do from end to end. Will it tug a balloon? Or wrap around a box? Will it twist and turn and tangle in knots? Will it pull down a shade? Will it turn on a light? Will it fly in the sky holding onto a kite? Will it hang a picture on the wall? Will it help the sweet pea vines grow tall? Will it finish a necklace, a banjo, a mop? A top? Will it skip in a game played with your friends? Or tie a pole with a hook on the end? Will it weave through a nest? That's the string I like best. Thank you, bird. Now I see. A string is as long as a string needs to be. So as you can see, the string could be used for so many different ways. You can really have a brainstorming session with your children to talk about all of the different things you can use. You can plan, and then you can produce it and have them actually get all of those objects.
Thank you, Tiffany. Another great activity is using sound for concept development. So you can have 3 containers, or as many as you'd like, with different objects in it that children can shake. And then before they do that, you can ask them prediction questions. Which do they think would be the loudest one? Encouraging them to use that analysis and reasoning to determine why do they think that one will be louder than the other one? And what about the object makes them think that way? You have vocabulary like quiet and loud, and some extension questions. Why do you think some objects sound louder than others? What other objects would make a quiet sound? So then you can also try an activity where the children close their eyes and they can shake and predict which one they think is the actual object, or which of the 3 or 4 balls they used. Another one is using rocks for concept development. This can be done again in a nature walk that you go out and pick your rocks, or it could be rocks they bring from home, or it could be rocks that you purchased for your classroom science area. And using magnifying glass, they can compare and contrast the rocks and ask, how are they alike and how are they different? This is a good sorting activity. And to extend it, you have your vocabulary, you have your extension questions. How are some of the rocks the same? How are they different? Have you seen rocks that look like this where you live? A beautiful chart would be one where you would write, I see, I think, I wonder, and then give children sticky pads, sticky notes, and they can write down what is it that they see, so they can draw. What are they seeing? What is it that they think? What are they wondering about these different rocks? Next slide.
Okay, so now we have know, see, do, how teachers improve. So with the know, when teachers know, they understand what effective interactions are and how to recognize them and why they're important. With the see, you get to see effective interactions to build self-awareness. That would be like those videos that you saw. And the do, that's when you can practice and reflect on what you know. You can actually see your teaching, and you can notice what you're already doing, and then what other strategies that you can put in place to help yourself continue to improve. So what we have here are some reflective questions. So you can just type, you can choose one that you would want to answer, and then just put it in the question box. Tell me what you know about concept development, or what was the teacher doing in one of the videos we showed? Or the do, where in your day could you see implementing some of these interactions using concept development? Okay, so now we have the when-then strategy, and this is the do. This strategy helps you plan and practice for specific interactions. It helps you visualize what you can do with your children, and really any of those interactions that you have with them, how you can help them be successful. So research shows that to actually follow through on goals, you need to break them down into specific steps. Those would be those when-then statements. So an example of a when-then statement could be that brainstorming. When we break from circle, I will ask children to brainstorm ways they can help clean up and get ready to go outside. So you're going to take a when, a specific time of day, a center, a routine, and then the I will. You're going to describe your new behavior. It can also help you see what you're doing or what you're not doing, and then how to change that behavior. So now we just have a couple of when-then examples to show you. So we have here for analysis and reasoning, a why and how question that you can ask. At a small group, I will ask children to look at pictures of themselves as babies and then discuss how they have changed over time. For problem solving, when I'm at the puppet theater during centers, I will simulate the problem of feeling jealous and ask children what the puppets could do to feel better. Classification comparison. When the children eat snack, then I will ask them about what they eat at home and how it's the same as or different from what they eat at school, and evaluation. When children finish building, then I'm going to engage in that activity with my children.
Okay, so to connect the dots of our presentation, we just want to highlight that intentionally building on what children are doing in ways that help them develop a deeper understanding is important and integral to concept development. We want to encourage children to share their ideas and ask them to tell you about what they are working on. We have to ask them the questions that encourage them to explain their thinking and help them to learn to ask their own questions. We want to make sure we're linking concepts across activities and connecting them to their prior knowledge and also to their real world, what's relevant to them. We're going to share a few quotes. The first is, concept development is not something that you are either good at or bad at, but rather a learning process for grown-ups too. Improving takes planning and practice. This is from Sherilyn Crump, and yes, it is something that we just need to keep practicing. Please, please, please take a picture. This is our contact information. I've had some questions in the question boxes that are very specific. So please, my name is Amy Hamley. My co-facilitator and co-manager is Tiffany Bernard. Our director of education is Allison Match. These are our email addresses here. So please take a screenshot or take a picture. And you are welcome to ask us any other questions, and we'll be able to send you some additional resources. We hope you enjoyed our webinar, and we leave you again with a couple more quotes. Education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think, Mr. Albert Einstein. Children must be taught how to think, not what to think. We have some references here. Again, you can take a screenshot or take a picture. These are some of the resources that we used for this training. And just, sorry, that's Tiffany's slide. I'm jumping into your slide, Tiffany.
That's okay, Amy, we share. So just some more housekeeping. You had your panel that if it at any point didn't extend, you click on the orange rectangle and it will extend, and you'll be able to click on the questions box to ask any questions or comments that you need to make. Just a reminder, your certificate will be emailed to you after the webinar. If you were unable to download the handouts, you can email us and then we will send you out the handouts. And we would like to leave you with one final quote. Remember to encourage your children to think and wonder.
Wonder and think.
And of course, that was by the famous Dr. Seuss, who we all know and love. We hope that you all enjoyed our presentation. We hope that you found a lot of great tips that you can use and bring back to your classrooms or share with colleagues that weren't able to attend the training. The handouts are great because they will be able to provide you with some of those questions and suggestions that we went over in our presentation.
Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Please reach out to us and continue to do the great things that you do for our community.
Okay, I just wanted to check the chat box just a second, and we got some great comments. Thank you all. We hope that we see a lot of learned a lot. So I'm so glad that you guys were able to use this information. And some of these other questions that were asked, we're going to get back to you because like Amy had mentioned earlier, they were really specific. So we want to be able to answer them in detail. So thank you.
Some of you have asked for the links to the videos. We will be sending out an email with, again, the handouts for those who were unable to download them. And we can include some of the links and the references where we got some of our information from.
Yes, and actually the videos were all from the Head Start website. So that is a wonderful website, and we will definitely include that for you to be able to access. So once again, thank you everyone. Think and wonder, wonder and think, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Bye-bye.